Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Sarah, and Sarah wrote, "Never gave up, just gave back." It was fantastic. And I got to meet, which you won't see, but I got to meet briefly, her Jack Russell Sprout. I hope you enjoy the episode. Good morning. Hello again. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, David. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Welcome to the podcast. Hopefully we'll get through these little internet glitches that we've just experienced. Before we get into the book and running and... No, you haven't got a book, have you? Well, you have got a book.
Yes, I have got
You
a
have got a book, yeah. Sorry, got a bit confused then. Could you tell me about Sprout?
I had a running companion, Kenny, for 15 years. And he died 2 years ago.
Oh.
And my family said that I should get another puppy before Kenny died, because Kenny was like my life.
Yeah.
So I got Sprout. And so he's 3 years old now. So him and Kenny had a year together before Kenny passed. And he's become my running companion. He, like, when I swim in the sea, he swims in the sea with me. And he's just an amazing little dog, very, very well behaved, completely trained off lead, and he's just a lovely little dog.
He's a Jack Russell,
Very
isn't
lucky. Yes, yeah, short-haired Jack Russell.
he? Nice.
Yeah, and he got his name from a very big brown Labrador. I was looking for some trees in where Thomas à Becket's church is and everything. I was there in my camper van, and I had Kenny with me, and I thought I'd take Kenny for one last trip without Sprout before I got him. And I was looking for these trees, and I saw this wonderful old man with his big brown Labrador, and I said, I'm looking for these trees that were built hundreds of years ago, planted. And he called his dog, and I said, what did you call your dog? And he goes, oh, me grandson said I'd got to call him Sprout. And I kept trying to tell him that he was going to go big. And then he said 2 weeks ago he was watching a gardening program, and they had a Jack Russell called Sprout. So I said, that's it. I'm calling my dog Sprout.
I like that. I like that, because that's always kind of... Yeah, it's just nice, isn't it? It's just nice.
It is nice, yeah. And it brings back a nice memory every time, because people say, how come you named him Sprout?
That's good. That's good. Did it help having another dog? Because I've only got one dog, and she's getting old now. Did it help having Sprout?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like 100%. I took Kenny to the vet. I didn't know they were going to put him to sleep that afternoon. And when she said, we have to do it for him, it's the right thing to do now. I was horrified. And then they wanted to take him away. And I said, no, I'm taking him home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I suddenly remembered that I had a 1-year-old at home, and I hadn't dug a hole for Kenny. And my neighbours were wonderful. They came and took Sprout and then dug a hole for me. And I think having the other dog helped. And because Sprout had come straight from his family, as you know, an eight-week-old puppy, he just clung to me because suddenly he'd lost Kenny as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we've got this special bond, and he's such a loving dog. He just loves humans, and is very obedient, very good boy.
Excellent.
So
That's nice.
He's a big part of my life. Hope he'll stay the rest of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because it is. I mean, I've got a rescue staffy called Molly, who's like Velcro, and I just adore her. And I that level of companionship that she gives me is just unbelievable, absolutely phenomenal.
As soon as you come in, they're like so excited, and they're just wonderful.
But she does this thing where she runs around the sitting room, barking at everyone else when I come in, as if to say, he's here. Do you not realise how great this moment is? He's back home. How dare you not be excited about this? and I don't know if she's telling them I'm home or telling them off.
Oh, right.
So yes. So tell me about the book.
Well, I sold my business very luckily 2 months before lockdown happened. So it was amazing. The
Yeah.
doctors had said to me that I definitely needed to sell it because it was causing me lots of stress. And then I found out I had cancer. And so it was like, I just didn't think I was going to find anybody. And then this person appeared, offered me a ridiculously low price, but I just thought, I need to get rid of the stress. I've got to have, cancer removed. And I just thought, I'll just go for it. And of course, I didn't know. Nobody knew that lockdown was going to happen.
Yeah.
And everybody, all my clients said, how lucky were you? And as the time sort of progressed, they said, why don't you write a book? You've got all this time now. So I started just under 2 years ago. And I thought, yeah, I think I'm in a place now where I could write this book because a lot of unusual, uncomfortable, horrible things had happened to me in my life. And I just felt I would like to show other people that I didn't go to drugs or alcohol or try to kill myself. And that after the first 45 years of my life, it was almost like that prepared me for the next 25 years of my life when I started running. And my accountant said, you should run. And I said, I can't run. And he said, well, you stand up all day because I was a nurse first. And then I went into having my own hairdressing and beauty business. And I found that I could actually run fast.
Oh, that's good.
So I everybody was like talking about their times and everything, and I just thought it's wet and cold. What am I doing this for? I couldn't understand what I was doing it for, and so I started running to raise money for children, and I've now raised over £162,000
That's
for terminally
brilliant.
ill kids.
That I mean
So
that's a significant sum of money.
yeah, it is. I wish I had it.
Yeah.
What could you do with that? So writing the book, I didn't know quite how I was going to write it. And then when I started doing it, I found some of it quite difficult to put down in writing. I found some of it very cathartic. When I reached the things that happened to me in Africa, I actually went up to Scotland with little Sprout, and because I'd lost Kenny then, and I'd walk with him in the morning and then sit and write, and then we'd go running in the evening. And he was so good. He just sat by me for 3 or 4 hours while I was typing away at the computer. And then when I came to doing my 24 years of fundraising and racing, I did like a pin board, like they do in the movies,
Yeah.
where they put like the bad people and the good
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah. How are these people all connected?
Yeah, so I put like each year, and then I put things that happened, like moved house, sold business, whatever, got married again, and then I put what I did race wise, and then how much money I raised, and if I achieved anything, if that was like first place or
Yeah.
something like that. So it made it easier to write. Sometimes some of the races I couldn't remember at all because I have done over 100 races, 11 world championships, and just, a lot of racing. I don't know how I raced that much and worked and fundraised. I have no idea. Just like you just kind of, they say, isn't it? If you know a busy person, ask her to do something.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because how did you, how can I say, I'm trying to think about what it is I'm trying to ask.
Okay.
You know when the people convince themselves that I can't do that, right? And I try and explain to some people sometimes it's the only difference between I can't and like if you think you can't or you think you can, you're probably right, which is the Henry Ford quote. And I try and explain to people that thing you think that is unachievable is just on the other side of the door. And the only difference is you haven't opened it because you're not sure if it's locked or unlocked. And it's always unlocked. but you have to open the door and just let things unfold as they unfold, and it won't be in any order that you considered it. So, like,
Yeah.
do you have any advice for people that are like, I don't think I can?
Yeah, I try. Well, the first thing is to say, not to say in your vocabulary, I can't.
Mm.
Okay. So if someone says, could you write a book? And you could say, well, I could try. So rephrase your wording like, can I run a marathon? Of course you can. Well, how can I run a marathon? Well, by training, and making yourself accountable for things. Life is, you only get one life, and every day is like a special blessing, isn't it? That you
Mm.
there the next day. And I found that when I hit obstacles, I said, of course I can do this, and and try and train. And I found by training that if you didn't train, I think I did 2 races where I didn't train properly, I really hurt. And that's not nice.
No.
Because if you train, you don't hurt. So I think if people are saying, they can't do things because of this, or they can't do that because of mental health, or, I mean, 50 years ago, we didn't know about mental health. And you just put your big girl pants on and you got on with life, didn't you?
Mm.
You couldn't make any excuses. I mean, now they have loads of excuses, but I think what my book shows is that you can overcome any obstacle,
Mm.
however hard it seems, however big, you know, you can because you just have to like kind of put yourself outside of the situation. I mean, one of the things I didn't go for therapy for, I think it was like 26, 27 years, because life got in the way of what happened to me in Africa. And once I went, I was like, why didn't I go before? You know,
Yeah.
but when you've got 4 children and, a lot to do, and your husband dies and you're left in debt and all these things, you just carry on. And then suddenly you come to a standstill, and then you look and you think, I can do this. I can do this by myself. I remember running my first marathon, running round saying to my husband, Dimitri, because he died then, I said, look at me, I'm in Lycra and I'm running the London Marathon, you know, because some people try to control you,
Mm.
and I let men control me. I did. But that was because of, I think, of my childhood and what happened in Africa. Because I was looking for a father figure, for someone to be stronger than me. So
Mm.
you end up finding controlling men.
Mm.
And of course, a lot of controlling men like alcohol, which is not a good thing to base a marriage on.
No, because it's difficult, isn't it? Because when if you have a positive father figure who's a sense of security and takes
Mm,
care and looks after you, it's always how positive that is. You then, like you say, you seek the same sort of thing in other men because, well, this is a familiar, safe space. But what people
yeah,
often don't understand, if that's not how you grow up, you don't realize it's not a safe space. So you
yeah.
you just walk into the same room because it's familiar. It's like, well, I know this. I know how to navigate it.
Yeah. So you can imagine how I felt. To me, my daddy was my daddy, and
Yeah.
he was my life. And then just before my 18th birthday, I found out he wasn't my father, and that another man was. And all I wanted to do was go and meet this man. And I remember daddy at the airport saying, Sarah, you will come back. won't you? And I said, of course I will. You're my daddy. I just want to go and see who I am, you know. And then you meet another man who's so much like you. It was, it was, I found it very difficult. I found it very difficult. And I only had him for a very short time in my life because he died when I was 23. So I didn't, and I was in Africa, so I didn't get to know him very well. But one of his sons, who's still alive, Julian and I, we're extremely close. And even though I didn't meet him until after Dimitri died, so I was 42 before I saw him again. When I met him the first time, he was like 9 years old. And all the time, Julian says, "Oh my God, you're so much like Dad. You know, you've got the same mannerisms. You do this, you do that. You look like Dad, you know." And I remember when we came from Africa nearly 40 years ago, Dimitri met my older sister. And when they'd gone home with her two children, he said, "This is your family. This is where you belong. These are the people who you are." And it is that those are the people, you know, who are my family, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky. I have two families. I have my mother's side and I have my father's side.
Yeah.
Both of my parents are deceased and my stepdad. So I just have some brothers and sisters alive on my mum's side and two brothers alive on my dad's side. So, but it's nice having two families. I like it now.
It must, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. I actually, I can't. It's not possible for me to imagine what that's like to get to a certain stage of your life and find out that you're not my dad. You know, it's just like, and I wouldn't even know what the appropriate, if there is such a thing as an appropriate reaction. I don't know what that would be, and I've always found those stories interesting over the years because people seem to always react differently. There's never like a common theme. Like, everybody reacts the same. Some people are, I knew this girl once who was telling me that she found out at like 14, 15, her dad wasn't her real dad and knew he wasn't. Her mum had an affair. And I was just like, oh wow, I you know, like I didn't know what to say. And she's like, no. She goes, immediately I was just like, I'm the luckiest girl in the world because he chose me.
Yeah.
And she,
it is a very difficult thing to explain. But one thing I have noticed from listening to programs is that when they have these programs on TV, all of the children or the adults say they felt that something wasn't right. And I must admit that all through my childhood, I felt that I was different.
Yeah.
I felt that I wasn't ever punished enough by my daddy. My mother was always very strict with me. At high school, because my father was French, so French was my first language. And when I went to high school and started speaking French, and the teacher said, "Oh, I'm going to put you on the door, you know, we're having a French evening." And then she saw my mum and she goes, "Oh, your daughter's incredible. You know, are you sure there's no French people in your family?" And Mummy said, "No, of course not." And of course, you know, my father was French and it was my first language. So, you know, then I was like 12 years old. So you haven't forgotten it, have you?
No.
But you kind of have.
Yeah.
And they say like the first 7 years of your life are very important, aren't they? And the first 9 years of my life were very different. You know, I stayed with my real father for a bit, then I went back to England, then I lived with my nana and granddad, then I lived with a step grandma, and one of my sisters came to live with me. And then when I was 9, I went to live with the family and I stayed. And then I was very excited. But I can't say I had an unhappy childhood because I loved my nana and granddad.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, I don't know, things were different then, weren't they?
Oh, very, very. It's very difficult for people today to understand I always refer to this in podcasts that basically pre-internet is a completely different world.
Yeah.
And if you grew up, if you were old, so I was born in 74. So and my dad was in the army, so we did Germany, we did Cyprus, Catterick, places like that. And I only really remember Cyprus. By the time I was like 13, 14, my dad had left the army and we were stationed in Tidworth in Wiltshire. Yeah. And you can't explain to people, like my niece and nephew, it's just like what the world was like before the internet existed. It's just like, how do you even begin to sort of say, on one hand, we had absolutely nothing, but I would argue we have much more than you'll ever have.
Yeah. I mean, I was born 20 years before you. So, we didn't have anything. We didn't have telephones.
No.
I never learned computers at school or anything. That was...
Well, that's what I mean. Because when I was leaving school, there was only one computer that I can remember in school. And there was like a computer class if that was one of your options. And I guess they all huddled around the same computer. I don't know how it worked. I wasn't in that class. Yeah. So, it's a bizarre, like, how do you explain that to people? How do... And like you say, life was different. We grew up in an era where the parents and grandparents had all survived 2 world wars, Great Depressions.
Yeah.
It's just like they were just like, it wouldn't matter what happened to you. They would say, have you eaten today? Yeah. You got all your limbs? Yeah. Can you see? Yeah. Have you got all your own teeth? Yeah. Right. There's nothing wrong with you then. Get on with your life. Yeah. But this really tragic, terrible thing happened. Yeah. But that was yesterday. You can't change the past. You can't do anything about it. So smile and get on with it. You're just ungrateful for everything you've got in your life.
Yeah. I think that sums up why I wrote the book, to make people realize today that you can still live your life even if things happen that aren't good, and you can turn it around. And I mean, I turned my life totally around and became an international Iron Man triathlete, top 5% in the whole world, at the age of 63. So, you can do anything. You can do anything, and it wasn't like I was like addicted to anything. I just did it to raise money for kids. Every year, it would, like, some other organization would ask me, and I just think, oh, what am I going to do this year then? How am I going to raise this money? Yeah. I did lots of cooking. Yeah. That was one of my things. My staff said, "You're a really good cook, Sarah. Why don't you cook and then sell your food, and your jams and marmalades and stuff?" And then I think, what race am I going to do? And then it kind of progressed with each race. I start my book off in 2004 when I'm 51, trying to qualify for the Great Escape from Alcatraz prison triathlon.
Okay.
So you swim from Alcatraz prison. And there was 100 people in the competition and only 20 people would get a place. So you had to finish in the top 20. And as I say in the book, like, there's one serious problem with me. I couldn't put my head under the water. I was absolutely petrified of the water. And I came out of the water and I was 98th, so I wasn't last. And then I got on the bike, which I'd got used to a bit then because I'd been doing triathlon for 4 years. And I finished in, I think it was 46th place. But I was like, I'm still, a long way off going to San Francisco. And then when I finished the run, I was 12th, first in my age group. And so I was going, but there was one stipulation, was that I had to learn front crawl. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can actually learn front crawl. And you see, I say, I don't know if I can do this. Absolutely. I didn't say I couldn't. I can't.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I remember I had teachers helping me, and like kicking's important. And I'd hold a board and kick and go backwards. And they'd say, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm going backwards."
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when it came to the day of the race, I think I'd only swum one race front crawl. I'd been practicing, obviously, and I wasn't ready really to do the race. Um, and then what happened was suddenly the giant orange ball that was on the beach was getting smaller instead of bigger
Yeah.
because we were, in the San Francisco Bay where all the sharks are, and nobody escaped from Alcatraz prison, did they? And then I got picked up in a boat. I won't tell you anymore. You have to buy the book.
Well, because that was actually going to be one of my questions. Is how did they do a swimming race from Alcatraz? If the point about Alcatraz is nobody could swim in the water.
Yeah, so there are each day there is an actual time when the tides cross each other,
So yeah,
and there is a pathway through. And the day that they did it for us, our race day, they got it wrong. So what happened was a few of us were being taken back out to sea.
yeah.
And that was really scary. I was just like, I've got 2 miles to swim, and now the ball's getting smaller instead of bigger.
Yeah, no, I surf.
What's gonna...
I surf, and I've been caught in rips and stuff, and it's hard to
Yeah.
explain to people. So it doesn't matter how well you swim, you're not getting anywhere.
No, no. And then they put us somewhere else to swim to another beach. And the tide immediately, instead of swimming straight, took me over there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember sort of using some unusual language when I got out of the water. As to
Thank you. You were so helpful. I'm so grateful. That's sort of
what the
unusual.
prisoners went through,
Yeah.
And of course, then we had to cycle all around San Francisco. And as you know, San Francisco is immensely hilly.
Yeah.
But there was one highlight on the bike was Robin Williams,
Yeah.
the actor. He lives there. Well, he lived there. And he was in the park. And suddenly I saw this man standing on this big box in bright red and waving at all of us. And that sort of was just really special seeing him,
Yeah.
because he's such a funny man. And he suffered a lot, didn't he, with
He
depression?
did. Yeah. As we found out much later in life that
Yeah.
he was incredibly depressed. I think I saw somewhere that there was also a medication he was on that might have made him worse.
Right.
But again, yeah, it just kind of, that's a strange thing, isn't it? I think the tragic thing with Robin Williams was for people that never experienced him from, like, I remember him in Mork and Mindy. Did
Yeah.
you do what I mean? And
Oh, yes.
yeah, and for a guy that made so many people laugh,
Yeah.
to be so sad, it's just not fair.
No, it's not fair. I know when the times in my life when the doctors or nurses wanted to put me on medication, I said no every time. Because I think one time I tried for a very short period, like a week or something, and I felt so like not myself that I wasn't in control of me. And I just thought, I prefer to be in control of myself, even if I can't stop crying or I can't, be quiet or still. I found one of the things with the stress was I couldn't be still.
Yeah.
I found that I was always moving something, and that showed me that I was stressed. So then I got to know when I was stressed because I couldn't actually sit still. And so I would focus on my foot that was moving. It was normally my foot.
Yeah.
And I'd focus on that and I'd say, right, stop moving. And it would only be like a few seconds and it was moving again.
I'm
And then I
like that.
thought, oh yeah. You have to find what is stressing you and get it out of your life. And sometimes that's very hard.
Yeah, I'm just an eternal overthinker. you know. And I,
Yeah.
I will sit there and see something going on in a world event and be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's just completely pointless. And why do you do what I mean? And you just, and then before you know it, and bearing in mind, I coach people and I'm a hypnotherapist, so I really have quite a good understanding of how the brain works. But whilst telling other people, why are you getting involved in things that you can't control? Before I know it,
Yeah.
I'll have spent an hour trying to figure out the world's problems. It's like, what are you doing? This doesn't even impact you. Yeah.
No. And it's funny that you say you're a hypnotherapist because that's how I went for my therapy. I tried different things with the doctors, and then my friend said, "Why don't you go to a hypnotherapist? But it has to be a good one."
Mm.
And she was like the top lady in London, and she gave me 5 numbers, and she said, "Phone each of them and listen to their voices. And
Yeah.
if you like their voice, then go to them." And I went to this guy called Stephen Thorpe in Angmering. He's not doing it anymore, but he was amazing. Like I'd go every week, sometimes twice a week, and I didn't want to go back to that place, you know.
Mm.
And I couldn't open my eyes because they were like glued shut. And then he'd put a lemon in my mouth,
Yeah.
and I go, oh, and then he immediately put me back where we left off.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, then your brain like can't get out of it. It's really strange.
Yeah.
You're locked into being hypnotized. And he was very good. He helped me with everything, like not just what I went there for, but with everything. I was going to marry my third husband, and I felt that I needed to go to have therapy about what had happened in Africa, where I'd been brutally raped, and I was only 19, and I think that's why I made lots of mistakes as well. But you know, it was very difficult to relive it, but he helped me immensely. And now if I see somebody who's Indian, it doesn't bother me at all. You know, before I'd run away if I saw an Indian. And also he said, did I have a phobia? And I said, yeah, dreadful phobia of spiders. I mean,
Mm.
mega. And I'd pass out and when I arrived in Africa, I woke up one morning in the nurses' quarters and my face was out here. And when the matron told me that I'd been bitten by a spider, I fainted.
Yeah.
I was like, and she said they're always in twos, you know. But now I don't particularly like spiders, but they don't make me faint anymore. And I can, if I'm careful, take them outside and put them in the garden, you know. So my phobia went as well. He was very good, Stephen. I don't know how many treatments I had, a lot. But he was amazing man, very talented.
I do. Yeah. It's always one of the things that has concerned me with, you know, any kind of therapy. If you click with the right therapist, it's priceless. If you end up with the wrong therapist, you will lose hope.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain to people the difference between the two experiences, because if you click with a therapist, regardless of what's gone on in your life, if you click with that therapist and for the first time in however long leave that first session with, oh, there's hope, that's a life, it changes your life. But if you walk out that session thinking that there's no hope, you will potentially give up on your life.
Yeah. And that's what people do today, isn't it? They don't look at what they could do to make it better. You know, like when my husband died, I was left in huge debt. I didn't know how I was going to cope because he was like a father figure to me because he was a lot older. And everything that had happened, I just thought, how am I going to manage? And then, my accountant said, go running, and it was funny, because like I was very emotional, and you can run in the rain and nobody can see your tears.
Yeah,
I think Robin Williams said something about that.
I think he did. Somebody has said that. It is a quote.
Yes, it is a quote, isn't it? And also, like when you're running, you can actually talk to yourself. I know you've got to concentrate, but you can talk to yourself. And I know sometimes I'd be running along a hedge or something, and you didn't realize there was somebody behind it, and they go, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I'm not talking to you." But I do find that when I'm down, going out and doing some form of exercise, because I retired from racing 8 years ago, and one of the incentives to write my book was to go and do another Iron Man again. And so I did my first one in June, and I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified that I wouldn't get the cut-off times. But I not only got the cut-off times, I qualified for the World Championships.
Again.
And then 5 weeks ago, in Tallinn, in Estonia, I did the European Championships, and I came first by 10 minutes.
Well done.
So I'm training now for the World Championships in New Zealand.
Just to clarify, this is the retired triathlete, isn't it?
Yes, the retired triathlete.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, I was just going to do one, but then my family said, well, what if you did qualify for the World Championships? You should do another one.
But that's like opening a packet of biscuits, isn't it? I'll just have one. But it's open now, so you may as well have some more.
I mean, my friends have said, are you going to do any more? And I said, I don't know. I'll see. But when I started training, when I was halfway through the book, I was like, I couldn't focus my brain on going and training and writing the book and fundraising. And I was finding it very, very hard. So, as I said, you can't have this word, I can't do that, because I said, well, I can, because I've now set myself this goal. So I am going to do it. And all that I have to do is be accountable to me to do the training. If I don't do the training, then it's going to hurt. That's what I kept saying to myself. It'll hurt if you don't do the training. So remember that time before when you did it and you didn't train? So I was like, I will train. I will train. And obviously now the winter's coming, it's harder to motivate yourself. But you can do anything. I mean, and I've shown it now.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have. It's interesting you've said something about motivation.
Yeah.
Do you think, I've always argued there's no such thing as motivation. And somebody who does motivational talking and motivational coaching, all that is me getting you to a state of mind where you feel that you're incredible and unstoppable. The getting up on a Sunday morning, Tuesday morning, when it's pissing down with rain and windy, is discipline. Nobody's motivated to do that. That's when you literally get up and say, I absolutely despise and hate myself, so I'm going to go out and do it anyway. And somehow at the end of it, you come back and you feel good about it. But I've never met anyone that enjoyed it. Not anyone I wanted to spend company with anyway.
Well, you said about motivation. I think what motivates me is raising the money for kids.
Absolutely. But
so that's my motivation to go and train. Because if I don't go and train, I'll hurt. That's what I know will happen to me if I don't train.
So you do that then. So do you actually put yourself in a frame of mind? If you're struggling, like, I don't want to do it, do you put yourself in a frame of mind, there's something bigger than my discomfort, and that's important? Yeah.
So what I think, like, I get up in the morning and I think, I really don't want to go swim training. Yeah. It's cold. And to go and get in a pool when it's cold outside, it's colder, it's harder. And then I think, but you're fit and well, you have all your limbs, and you've reached this age, and those children, they're dying. And my very first race I ever did, a marathon, was for a little girl that had leukodystrophy. She was my mother's neighbor. And I thought, right, I'm going to go and ask the family if I can raise money for them. And they said she desperately needs a wheelchair and a lift to go in the bath. So I said, okay, I'm going to go and run a marathon. So the only marathon I could find was in Dublin. The London was full up, everywhere else, there wasn't anywhere places. So I thought, okay, I'll go. And I arrived there and I'm running along, going along there thinking, oh, this is not so bad. And then I meet this girl from America and she goes, how many marathons have you done? And I said, oh, this is my first. And she goes, I've done 7 or 6, I was like, oh, really? And she goes, how much training have you done? And I said, oh, just a couple of months. She said, well, you'll hit the wall.
Yeah.
And at 23 miles, I stood at the side of the road crying, thinking I've only got 3 miles left. And then the way I motivated myself to finish was I said to myself, you stupid woman, you're crying because your legs hurt. And there's a little girl that's flown with her parents all the way to Dublin to watch you finish. And I finished. I finished crying, mind. But it was the child that was dying that made me finish the race.
That's beating yourself up pretty badly, though, isn't it?
It was, but I just thought, well,
I could just see you as a therapist. I've had this. You're having a bad day. There's kids dying. How dare you even think that it's okay to feel sorry for yourself?
I think what it was, I went out to Africa nursing, and I nursed with children with physical disabilities and adults, and I think I saw so much love from these children that were deaf or epileptic or only had one limb or so many different things that I was so appreciative. I mean, I think I was a bit hard on my kids as they were growing up. Oh, you've cut your thumb. Oh, well, get on with it. It's fine. Stick a plaster on it.
You've got another thumb. You didn't even need that.
I think I was a bit hard on my kids when they were young.
It's hard not to be, though, isn't it? But this goes back to what we were saying before. Once upon a time, and I must sound like a stuck record on these podcasts sometimes because I talk about the memories I have of my grandparents and their expectations of what you should be grateful for, because they literally grew up in a world that if there was a solid roof over your head and food on the table, you had nothing to worry about. If you go, you don't even have to go back far, and it was something like 3 in every 5 children died or something, or 2 in every 5 died. So if you had given birth 5 times, 2 of your children had died and 3 were alive, well, you should be grateful for that.
Yeah.
And then that was the mentality, because you could have lost them all. And it was something like 1 in 20 childbirths, the mother died. So it's just like, if you'd survived childbirth, what are you complaining about? You could be the one that died. And it is that mentality that they had is if you were breathing, had clothes on your back, food on the table, you've got a good life. Be grateful.
It was very different, and I'm hoping that my book, because it's my whole life, it will show people how you can have a whole life and then achieve so much. You can. Sprouty. It's probably the postman.
That's right.
Out.
But it won't be the first delivery driver that's turned up in the middle of a podcast.
So I just feel that it can help so many people. It can help young children going through family breakups, which happens so often now, and it can help you realize that even if you haven't excelled brilliantly at school, there are still things that you can do and that you can learn. If you put your mind to it. I feel like you can do anything. I am pretty rubbish on the computer though, and I am pretty rubbish at maths because I have dyslexia.
You say that, but you picked up a Zoom link and you're talking to me. You've written a book on a computer. It's pretty good.
Yes, I have. Yeah. Mind you, this is a new computer. My son said my other one So I've only had this a week. And my son said, "You need a new computer, Mummy. Your Surface is so old. It's so slow." And so that's why I couldn't find things because I'm not quite sure where all
Yeah.
the buttons are.
I've been like that. I change my laptop about every 3 years. And
Really?
yeah.
Oh my God.
But it's just because I do things like this and things get slower. And I swear my brain is still stuck on a laptop I had 10 years ago because I'm still looking around. And I have my old laptop in front of me. It's not on or anything because in case I can't find something, so I turn that on and 9 times out of 10 I'll find it on there.
Yeah. It's like my phone. My son says, "You should have a new phone, Mummy." And I said, "But I know where everything is
Yeah.
on it. So what do I need a new phone for?"
But I'm the same. I've got to that point in my life where I only replace my phone if I break it because I just can't be doing with
No,
I don't
the
adapt to
learning.
the change. Yeah, it's just, and it's not just the learning. It's learning that I'd have it in a category of this is pointless. It doesn't serve me to. And people are like, you should keep up with technology. No. I was happy with where I was. I actually
Yeah.
enjoyed that state. And you're taking me to somewhere that I don't want to go. And you'll be like, it's got all these new features. I don't use any of them.
Well, my son, he's a computer engineer.
Yeah, the
So,
worst people.
yes,
I'm sure he's a very lovely son, by the way, just to clarify.
he is. He is. He is a very lovely son. But he is like, I remember the first time my brother, a few years back now, Julian, my younger brother on my dad's side, and he said to Alexander, "Can you show me how to set up this thing?" And Alexander went, "Yes." And he went like this. And Julian goes, "Well, I didn't see any of that." Can you do it in slow motion?
I was trying to help my mum. Well, I did help her this morning do some
Yeah.
boiler quotes that needed to be sent off to the grant people. And my mum's trying to and I've just said to her, all I need to know is who you emailed. And my mum starts over the top of me trying to find, and I just need to know the name of the person or the company. And she goes, "I can't find it. If you could just give me the name of the person who you spoke to or the company." Well, it was Warm and Safe, and I just started typing in WAR. Oh, look, there it is. Yes, Mum. That's what I've been trying to explain for 5 minutes. But whilst asking for my help, you still won't listen to me.
Yeah.
But it is what? How? I'm trying to think. Often when I'm talking to people and something horrific has happened, they struggle with forgiveness. Did you have to forgive anything?
Yes, I had to forgive people for what they did to me. And I did struggle a lot with my first husband. But when I forgave him, one day I was out running,
Yeah.
actually. It was winter time and I was out running and I'd been training on the treadmill and I was running outside, even though it was cold. And I just said, "God, I forgive Dimitri for what he did to me. I forgive him. He's asking." So I'd spoken to him through a medium,
Yeah.
and she said that Dimitri was asking constantly for your forgiveness, not for what he'd done to the children, but for what he'd done to you. And he kept saying, "Please ask her to forgive me." And when I was talking to this woman, I couldn't. And then I don't know how much longer time passed, but I did. And I was out running and I said, "Okay, I forgive you, Dimitri. I forgive for what you did. And you didn't know what you were doing and I forgive you." And it was like a yoke was lifted off my shoulders. It was amazing, absolutely incredible. And I obviously had to, years later, to forgive my mother for what she did by lying to me all those years. And I managed to detach myself from her first because wherever I saw her or she phoned up, I used to go all bright red and get all agitated. And I thought, I need to be able to detach myself from my mom. And this is something, when you've had alcoholics in your life, you go to Al-Anon
Yeah.
and they teach you to detach yourself. And I wrote a letter to my mum only probably about a year before she died. She died in 2021. And I said, I understand now why you did these things. And, I forgive you for that. So you do have to forgive, because otherwise it stays inside of you. And then that is like a little worm in an apple, eating its way through. So if you don't forgive the person, then I think you you don't get over it. You don't get over it. I mean, I didn't have God in my life until I can't remember, after my third husband, when I divorced him, and I'd been by myself, like, I don't know, 12 years now, and I was out running in Africa, and I came across a little church with like plastic chairs and a little wooden cross. And I'd been talking to my friend Terry, and she said, Sarah, why have you got this dreadful need to be loved? And I think it was from everything, from being a child, from being raped, from having different men that were abusive to me. And I said, I don't know, Anyway, the guy said, come in, and I said, I haven't got my glasses, and I'm sweating wet, because it's very, very hot in Africa in December. And the priest, suddenly he pointed at me and he goes, why do you have this dreadful need to be loved when I'm here every day of your life? And I didn't realize what happened to me until I went back to England and went to my Al-Anon class. And they said, that's the most amazing thing of God going inside of you. And after that, I've never been somebody that goes to church or stuff like that, but I have a God box. And I do believe in God now. So I put a little note inside. And when I'm like at the last straw, the dead end, and every time he answers my prayers. And one of his things is, he forgave all of us, didn't he?
Yeah, I was raised as a Catholic, but I have very little time for the church in that sense. But I always remember a friend of mine once telling me that if you have faith, you never feel alone.
Yeah.
And there's moments in my life where I had faith, and I don't have it often, to be fair.
No.
Which is why I think there's a kind of inner loneliness, which is probably why I like to do podcasts, so I get to talk to people and ask them about their private lives. And be really nosy, but I get to talk about people's faith and how they found faith, because whenever I've met people who have faith or speak to people who have faith, they not only have a calmness, they have a contentness about themselves. They're really comfortable with who they are, regardless of where they've been or what's happened. And I definitely eternally search for it. And it's because I do believe in it, ironically. I just don't seem to feel it the way that I want to. And maybe that's the issue, that I put an expectation on it.
Well, I started doing something only recently, is every morning before I go downstairs, I actually kneel by the bed.
Yeah.
And Sprout sleeps with me upstairs on his dressing gown at the bottom of the bed. He's not allowed in the bed or anything. He has to sleep at the bottom. Anyway, the first morning I did it, I said, good morning, God. Thank you for... And Sprout's like, well, who's she talking to? Who's in the room? And now he's got used to it. And I try to make myself do it every day and be grateful for the sun that's shining, for my beautiful garden that I'm looking at, just being grateful and forgiving things that people did,
I honestly, I think it's sort of cliche, and as daft as it sounds, I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we can find for ourselves.
Yeah, it is definitely to forgive people. And whatever happened yesterday. You can't change it. You
No,
can't.
no, you can't. But and like I say, there's things I want to forgive. Like, people I want to let go, people I want to forgive. But there's also a part of me that's like, I'd love to see your house burn down. I really would. It would give me so much joy, and I know it's wrong. But my main principle is you've got to be honest with yourself. And obviously, you don't mean that. You want to. Maybe I do sometimes, but. It's realizing that it's that thing that you said, that when it's inside you, you don't realize how heavy that weight is, and for want of a better term, how cancerous it is and what it does to you. And when you let it go, when you can release it and let it go, it has nothing to do with them. It's what it does for you.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, like a yoke being lifted off my shoulders. You know, you bear things. It's like when you're sick, when you have a cold. This is a good way of describing it. When you have a cold, you think, oh my God, I got a cold. And then when you're better, you're like, oh, I feel fantastic. I was really poorly,
Yeah.
But you don't realize how poorly you were until you get better. And so it's the same thing with forgiveness, is about, once you let go, then you will feel so much better inside of you, like unbelievable. You just have to let go and let God.
And as I know you have a pressing lunch date, this is going to be a good place to round up.
I don't have a pressing lunch date. My friend's coming at 1 o'clock.
And it's nearly 1 o'clock.
Is it? Oh,
yeah. So,
I could talk to you for ages.
we can always do this again. I'm always happy to do it again. What's the name of the book, and where did people find it?
I have a website.
Sarah's gone off to find the book. That's why it's gone silent. For the people that are listening and not watching. So
okay, so here's my book.
Never gave up, just gave back.
Yes, so I never gave up through the whole of my life, and I always gave that back as a child, and then in my later years I gave back by raising money. So I have my own web page, which is Jouault, just JOUAULT.UK. So it's easy to find. My son did it so that it was simple. And you can go on there. You can either download my book, or you can send your details to me and I will post you a book. And also I'm obviously fundraising for my race. So you can go on Just Giving. And hopefully I will. My goal is to get a podium place in the World Championships.
Well, we will have to talk. We'll have to talk again after the World Championships, and you can let me know how it happened.
Yes, definitely, and hopefully you'd like to have a copy of my book as well.
Yeah, we'll do that. We will do that. I'm not an avid book reader. For somebody whose actually desk is littered with books, I'm terrible at actually getting. When I do sit down to read them, I get really engrossed. But I'm terrible at committing to picking that book up. It's almost like
my book is very readable. So it's like ends. Oh, and then what happened? And you're like, oh, well, what happened?
Yeah.
So it's one of those kind of books that you want to turn the next page, and it's my whole life in a small book. So it's not too padded, there's not lots of stuff. It's just straight as it was. And it has everything in it.
When is the World Championship?
On the 14th of December in Tapu in New Zealand.
14th, okay. I think we should try
on Saturday.
I think we should try and talk again in January.
Yes, I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Then I can tell you how I did.
And so, but before we go, one last question, which is just a random one that I like to ask. Just complete imagination. Right? Imagine you've got a time machine Where would you go back in history and why? What car would you use to drive yourself? And what would you be listening to on the radio?
Where would I go back in
You can
time
go anywhere
in my life?
anywhere in history.
I think I'd like to go to the Taj Mahal in India. I've never been there. What car would I drive? A Maserati.
Nice.
And what was the other question?
What music would you be listening to?
What music would I listen to? I love music. To say choose one, I think probably Queen.
Nice.
I loved Freddie Mercury.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
He was incredible.
And I'm trying to think of the album. Is it Live Forever? Who Wants to
Yes.
Live? Because obviously that was the Highlander.
Forever.
Yeah, that was off the Highlander
Yes, at
soundtrack, wasn't
at
it?
the gift day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, this has been
Yes, I
absolutely.
love Freddie Mercury.
The Queen were phenomenal. They were phenomenal.
Yeah.
This has been brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope everybody enjoys it.
Okay.
And I'll speak to you soon
Yep, we will definitely.
when I'm world champion.
Yes, I will send you some dates for January.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, David.
And that was Sarah and Sprout. And what an amazing accomplishment. How do you even compare to that? But the message should be, probably is, you don't have to compare, because you can go and do it for yourself. You can try. You can get up off the chair and give it a go, because Sarah's just told you how to do it. And it was an amazing message, and I look forward again to talking to her in January after the World Championship, which is on the 14th of December, and her book, which the links and everything will be in the description. Do check it out. Do check out the website. Please do, if you can, donate. But above all else, wherever you are from, whatever you believe, as always, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for listening. Be blessed and take care.